Hey guys, welcome back to Tara's Bad Luck Club. I wanted to talk to you today about a new game coming out to Kickstarter in October called Journeys Afar. Journeys Afar is designed by Travis Chance and is coming out with indie boards and cards. This is an open world game that Travis designed with his 11-year-old daughter in mind. So it's a very friendly game, and while there is some combat in there, it doesn't come across as like super gory or intense. So it's like very straightforward, and it's almost narrated in a way that's like silly and cute and fun. A lot of the cards in this game are really lighthearted, and reading through them just makes you laugh, like when you encounter a giant salamander by the river. So it's not like a very dark game by any means. It has like a thought of Studio Ghibli movies, so very fantastical and not necessarily like rooted in reality. So just keep that in mind, like moving forward, and that is kind of how the game came to be. So the base of Journeys Afar comes with 6 different worlds, and there will be 2 more that become available in Kickstarter. Each of these worlds has its own abilities and ways that you interact with it that differ from one another. So at the start of the game, everybody will take one of the worlds. They will also take all of the components that go with the world. I can't show a ton of stuff because I do have a prototype copy. However, the finalized product will have some nice game storage in there, so you should easily be able to take out all of the components for each world to help with setup. Once you have it all set up, you can read through everything. There's different locations that are the same from map to map. There's like a market where you can go and buy different weapons and everything. There is a mine where you can go to forage more goods such as gold, silver, glass. You might get dirt. There is dirt in the bag, which basically just like bogs the bag down. It's just one less resource that you get that round when you go mining. There is a shrine where you can go if you get cursed. You can get cursed if you lose a battle against somebody. So if you're going and trying to fight a Ronin and you lose, you might get cursed. This is a way to remove those curses because they are negative points. You can go to the tea house where you gain a fate. A fate is a token that helps you with rerolls. So if in battle you don't get what you want, you can always reroll your die. You will also gain 2 quests and keep 1. Quests are just extra missions that you can work on to complete for more legendary points, which are victory points in the game. One of my favorite things in the game is how you spend effort to take your actions. You can have a maximum of 8 effort total, although everybody starts with 6. And every action that you take, whether it be moving or visiting a space on the board and exploring, you will be spending an effort. There are ways that you can have some more powerful actions, and then you'll end up exhausting your effort. And at the end of every round, you will not be refreshing that exhausted effort. It will stay there. So one way to get it back on everybody's board, you have a spring that you can visit. And when you visit the spring, that is how you're able to recover your exhausted effort. Everyone's board also has rough terrain. Rough terrain costs more to move through. So it costs 2 effort to move into, and then the same 1 effort to move out of. You also will have Ronins that appear. Once a Ronin is combated and beat, then a new Ronin will spawn in one of the worlds. There are also gate tokens that are out on the board. Everyone has 3 at the start of the game. You can go and explore those gate tokens and flip them over. Some of them will give you those fate tokens, which allow you to reroll dice. One of the tokens on your board will open a gate, which allows you to travel to other realms. The other realms being other players' boards. One thing that I think Journeys Afar does that's really clever is every board with a different world has its own set of cards. And when you are setting up the game, you will take those cards and combine them together with other players so that you have a specific setup for your gameplay that's going to be unique every time you play, especially if you're playing with different worlds. So everyone is going to be putting their Ronin cards together. So the Ronin will spawn in on different player boards. Everybody will be putting together the quest cards, so that way when you are going out and exploring, the quest cards that you're getting make sense to where you're able to travel to. So I really like the idea of having these like custom decks that you're building every time. It does make it a little bit tedious, I guess, when you're breaking the game down to separate everything back out. The setup is super easy. You're just throwing the cards together and shuffling them, but going through and separating them out at the end can be a little annoying, but honestly, it does not take that long, especially once there's going to be player trays and everything. it's going to make it so much easier to break down and make sure everything is organized and easy to put away. Okay, so how are you interacting with this game? At the start of the game, for each world, every player is going to get a set of 3 mission cards. These mission cards all have a story that is attached to them and why you were trying to complete these different missions. This is giving you kind of a base level thing to work on in the game and a direction to start to travel in. My biggest thing is I immediately just want to complete this checklist, and there's so much other stuff that you can do in this game. You can fight Ronins, you can interact with travelers. Interacting with the travelers is going to help boost your stats. Everybody has a board where they're going to be tracking their influence, their strength, and their wisdom. These different stats are going to help them with encounters that you're going to have. There are a lot of different ways that you can get legendary points in the game. One of the cons to me personally is that having this checklist on the side just kind of gives you something to work for almost too easily, just because it comes with the setup of the game. I feel like this is something that I would like use for the first time or two playing this game, or introducing new players to it, just so they can have an idea of going to explore different spaces. But I feel like I would house rule this maybe, where in later games we start with quest cards instead, especially because each world does come with 3 different sets of 3 mission cards. So there is some variability there. However, if there is like a world that you're really attached to, I feel like over time you might get tired of doing the same missions over and over again. So having something else that you can just kind of start the game working toward without even worrying about this might be the way to go in the future. However, with the setup of the game and having those mission cards, and with it being like your first time to sit down and play, having them is super helpful because it kind of gives you something to immediately start working towards. You want to go around your board, you want to start flipping the 3 gates over and trying to locate where the gate is that lets you travel. You want to go and find the Ronin and try to interact with them. Interacting with them will get you some resources, it'll boost your stats, it'll basically just help you get legendary points and just grow within the game. The way that gameplay works is when it's your turn, you will start by spending effort to move around your board. You can spend effort to travel, you can visit and explore, which is how you can interact with the different spaces on the map. You can also spend effort to fight. You can fight other players, or you can fight Ronin. The different cards will show you what you need to fight these Ronin and how to win. So you might need to have a stronger strength or a stronger wisdom than they have. And when you're doing this, you're rolling a die to encounter them. So the person next to you will roll the die and you will roll your own die against them. You can boost your stats a little bit with dice depending on how high your stats already are. You can also use your fate tokens to re-roll any dies. So if you don't like your first die attempt, you can definitely try again. There may also be some free actions or special actions that you can take depending on what cards you've collected throughout the game. Once you're finished all of that, you go through the recovery phase. The recovery phase is going to be taking all of the effort that you just spent and moving it back to replenish it. At this point, the player next to you will read you an encounter card. So this is going to be something, like I mentioned earlier, you might find a salamander along a lakeside. You may encounter somebody who needs your help. You will not get to see your choices, which is why the person next to you is reading these encounters out loud to you. And you're going to be making a decision if you want to help that person, if you want to rob that person, if you just want to run away from that person. Once you make a decision, then you might have to fight, you might gain a resource, but you're going to get something out of it in some way. In some circumstances, nothing might happen. Most of the time when you choose to interact with something, something is going to come of it, whether it be good or bad. At this point, you may spend some of that effort that you just refreshed a second ago. And at that point, it is going to go into the spent effort, and you're not going to have access to that at the start of your next turn. So you kind of want to make these decisions wisely, because if you only have that 6 available effort that you started with, and then you choose this encounter that makes you spend an effort, you are going to start your next turn with only 5, because at this point you have already done that recovery phase of your turn. So with this game, if you are playing a 2-player game, you will have a 3rd board that's out, because you need to have another board that you can send travelers to or just basically interact with. There are things that are going to make you move around to that 3rd board, and it just adds some more interest to the game. There are 2 game end triggers. One of the game end triggers being when somebody reaches 15 legendary points, and the second being when somebody completes all 3 of their mission sheets. Once somebody achieves 2 of these endgame triggers, everyone will finish the round, and then everyone will get 1 more additional turn to try and score any more points at the end of the game. At the end of the game, if somebody triggered it by completing all of their mission cards, they will gain one of the reserve cards and read the ending for it to kind of tie up the game with like a nice little bow on top. If somebody is going out and fighting Ronin and completing quests, they might be completing the 15 legendary points before somebody is able to complete their 3 missions if they are only working towards that. From my experience with the game, you're not solely just doing the checklist. There are other things. However, most people are not interacting with Ronin or necessarily trying to get more quests unless it's a spot that they're already passing through on their board. Okay, so let me go over some of my pros and cons with this game. I'll start with the pros. I think this game has like a solid foundation and is one of the better examples I've seen of open world being implemented into a board game. I really like the idea of everyone having their own world and their own world having special abilities and different things that you can interact with when you're there. I love asymmetrical player boards and games that players have asymmetrical abilities. So having this be a world that you can travel to and interact with other people's asymmetric abilities, I think is so cool. That was one of the things that drew me to this game, I think, is just having that ability to play around with the asymmetry of the game. I think there is a lot to do and explore, and this kind of overlaps with one of my cons for the game. Like I said earlier, having those mission cards kind of feels like it is directing you and pushing you in that direction. So if you're playing the game, like I said, and you're playing the same world over and over again, like I have played this game a few times and I am really drawn to Memori, so I keep playing with that same character and that world's missions. There is a cap to how much you can explore with that. Like I said, I do think it could be house ruled where maybe you start with a couple quest cards instead, and that's something you can play around with. The biggest thing is, are people playing their games enough where they are exploring all of the available content? I do think there are people who buy games and like play them into the ground. They love the game, they adore it, they have hundreds of plays with the same game. I do think that there are also people who play games that collect games and own hundreds of games and like to play a new to them game every time they play board games, which is totally fine. I'm kind of a little bit of both, if I'm being honest. Like there's oftentimes I play a board game and I'm like, this is my only chance to play a board game this week. I don't want to play something I've already played. I need to get something off my shelf of shame. There are also board games that I love that I play from time to time again and love to introduce to new people, or there's games that are good for crowds that don't really play board games, so I pull them out with them. You know, there's whatever, different experiences for everybody. So the biggest thing is, will you be playing this game enough where having the mission list that you're completing, does it become an issue for you even? Like, are you playing this game enough? And once you start playing this game, you begin to see what else there is to explore and how to move around. So it gets to a point where you don't even need those mission cards to guide you anymore. It's kind of like a double-edged sword where you're trying to figure out just what works best for you and how you're going to be interacting with Journeys Afar if you were to get this game. One of the other cons, I guess, is just setup and teardown. There can be a lot to it. When you're mixing all of these different cards together, there is going to be that breakdown where you're separating all of the cards out and making sure everybody gets everything back. There are going to be quest cards, there are different equipment cards, there are different encounter cards, there are just going to be different things that are getting mixed together. So it's not just one pile of cards getting mixed together, there are multiple piles of cards that are going to have to be separated out at the end of the game. I know setup and teardown can be a big factor for people if you only have so much time to play a game. Is that something that you want to have to worry about? Do you have a place that you can play where somebody can set up before everybody arrives, or are you going to a board game store or something to play a game? Those things all factor into it. One of the things that I like is it can be a bit of a table hog, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. The player boards are this big, so depending on how many people you have playing, they do take up a good bit of table space. And then there are different piles of cards. However, you can kind of keep the cards rather consolidated, so they don't necessarily have to take up a ton of room. And then everybody will also have one of these to keep track of their stats and keep track of their different resources that they're collecting. So it doesn't have to necessarily take up a ton of space. That alone does, and for each player, but that is about the extent of it. You will be gaining some cards throughout the game, but you can just tuck them and that's not going to take up a ton of more space. You're not going to have a ton of cards like out to the side. You're not running like a huge card engine or anything. So this isn't like Terraforming Mars or anything like that. There are different stacks of cards in the middle. I do feel like you can kind of make it so that it works for you. This is not something that you're going to be going and playing at a coffee shop by any means. However, if you do have like a limited table space, it won't be that horrible for you. One of the things that I really like in the game too is how straightforward combat is, or any kind of test that you're doing for your influence, strength, or wisdom. You can go into this almost knowing that you're going to win, so it can be pretty deterministic. There is a fate die that you will roll to see if it boosts your stats, and you might rely on that for some luck aspect if there's something that you're trying to achieve that you might not have enough strength for. But there are ways to boost it, and again, you can spend your fate tokens to re-roll the die. You can also gain more fate tokens from those fate dice. There are times when it is deterministic, so you might go into it knowing that you're going to be able to achieve what you're trying to do, but there are times where you might push your luck too, which can be fun, and I like that you can kind of decide when you're moving into something what kind of battle that it might be like that. One of the downsides for the game to me is kind of the time it takes to play it. I have no doubt that the more familiar you get with the game, the more quickly you're able to move through it. I did ask about the length of time it should take to play this game, and it should take about 30 minutes per player. That was definitely not the experience that I had, in that it took longer than that for sure. But that includes, again, like setup, the amount of time to like learn the game, and then to play through the game. You know, you're checking rules, making sure you're doing things right. But I think the game can be as quick or short as you want it to be. I don't necessarily think that you need to play through to 15 legendary points. I think that's another thing that can kind of be house ruled in a way. If you wanted to play a shorter version of the game, you can maybe make it 10 legendary points instead. I definitely think there's a lot of flexibility that, while it's not necessarily written into the rules of the game, I think it can be easily implemented. The other thing in the game that can really take a lot of time is reading those encounter cards. While the text on it is usually about just like a short paragraph long, some of the decisions can leave a person with a little bit of analysis paralysis, and while they're deciding like what they want to do and how they want to encounter their encounter. This across 4 different people can take a lot of time depending on how these people play. The group that you're playing with is really going to determine the amount of time that you take to play the game. So again, if this is something that you're just playing like once a year and you need to pull it out and relearn the rules every time before you get started, this is definitely going to be a longer game, especially if you're trying to explore as much as possible and not necessarily rush the end game. This can definitely be a pro for a lot of people. One of my friends that I played with absolutely loved the open world narrative. He loved, you know, mulling over every decision he was making and really taking his time and being like very thoughtful with the game, which is, you know, akin to how people play Legends of Zelda maybe. So going out, taking your time, exploring every possible nook and cranny before you're trying to complete your quests and getting to the end of the game. So that's definitely a plausible way to play the game. If time is a constraint for you, I think that this is something that like after a game or two, you will definitely get into the flow of things and be able to finish the game a lot quicker. However, I wouldn't expect that with the first time or two that you play this game and you're getting familiar with the mechanics, how to score points, how to navigate around, what all of the different locations do. Because while it is written out on your board, remembering everything and like how to interact with it is definitely going to take some time. So yeah, overall, the game is great. I think that there is, just like with any game, a audience for it. Is it for everybody? I don't think so. Like personally, I don't necessarily love open world games, and it's not something that I would necessarily be drawn to off the bat. However, there were a lot of aspects to it I like. Like I said, I really like that there's different worlds and that they all play differently. So being able to interact with them in one game is pretty interesting to me. You don't have to wait until the next time you play a game to try out a different world. You can literally just teleport over there and explore the world. I really like how the decks come together. So every time you're playing with a custom deck that you are creating for this game, whether that be the Ronin, the equipment, or the quest cards, or anything that you're using in the game is going to be custom for that specific game that you're playing through. Journeys Afar is coming to Kickstarter in October, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I only got to play with 5 of the worlds since I have a prototype. I don't even have all 6 that will be coming with the game, and then there will be 2 more worlds coming out with the expansion. So I am really excited to see the more stuff that gets added. I think it's really interesting, the unique player setups that you get to start the game with. So I can't wait to see what comes with this. I also can't wait to see the finished box and how the storage system is going to work. mark. I'm really excited for that. So I don't have information on that or what it looks like. I just asked how storage will be, and I was told that it's going to come in some neat packaging. So I am excited to see how that comes out at the end. I'm happy to talk about this more and answer any questions. So if there is anything more that you would like to know about Journeys Afar, please let me know in the comments and I will answer everything and we can chat some more about the game there. So thanks for tuning back in and sticking with me so far. And until next time, happy Halloween, I guess.